Nice to see you again. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
伊韦斯夫人，铃木新佑众议员，澳大利亚国防部安凯文前部长，澳大利亚国防部潘恩前部长，法国里昂政治学院高德夫副教授。
Please be seated.
我们远景基金会陈长亨董事长，我们爱沙尼亚伊维斯前总统阁下伉俪，我们日本铃木新佑众议员，来自澳洲的安凯文前国防部长，以及潘恩前国防部长，法国里昂政治学院高格夫副教授，各位贵宾、各位同仁，大家好。
Dr. Mark Chen,Chairperson of the Prospect Foundation, Your Excellency Thomas Hendrik Ilves, former President of Estonia, and former First Lady Eva Ilves, the Honorable Suzuki Keisuke, Member of the House of Representatives of Japan, the Honorable Kevin Andrews, former Minister for Defense of Australia, the Honorable Christopher Pyne, former Minister for Defense of Australia, Dr. Stefan Korkuf, Associate Professor at the Lyon Institute of Political Studies, distinguished guests and dear colleagues, good morning.
昨天今年度的凯达格兰论坛印太安全对话已经圆满落幕。非常感谢各位贵宾从世界各地远道而来，那么一起用行动来支持印太区域的自由开放和稳定繁荣。
Yesterday, the Ketagalan Forum 2022 Indo-Pacific Security Dialogue drew to a successful conclusion. I extend my sincere appreciation to you for traveling from all over the world to attend the event. Collectively, your actions have supported freedom, openness, stability, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region.
透过这次的论坛，我们共同探讨俄国入侵乌克兰等国际局势变化对世界经济秩序的重大影响，以及民主国家的因应作为。
At this year's forum, we discussed changes in the international landscape. This included the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the significant impact this has had on the global economic order, and how democracies ought to respond.
这几年来，疫情也改变了世界经济的情势，全球供应链正在加速的重组，尤其威权主义的扩张更提醒我们，民主国家必须团结一致，发展更深入的经贸合作，共同打造更具韧性的供应链。
In recent years, the pandemic has also altered the world economy and led to the rapid restructuring of global supply chains. And the expansion of authoritarianism has reminded us more than ever that democratic countries must unite to cultivate deeper economic and trade cooperation and jointly develop more resilient supply chains.
上个月，台湾和美国已经启动了台美21世纪贸易倡议，并且举办了首场会谈。台湾也持续努力做好准备，争取加入日本为领头羊的 CPTPP。台湾有意愿也有能力符合国际高标准的贸易规范。我们希望在全球民主伙伴的团结合作当中贡献力量。
Last month, Taiwan and the U.S. launched the U.S.-Taiwan Initiative on 21st Century Trade and held its first meeting. Meanwhile, Taiwan continues to prepare for and seeks to join the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership led by Japan. Taiwan is willing and able to meet the high standards expected under the international norms of trade. We hope to contribute to solidarity and cooperation among global democratic partners.
那么去年我们也组成了跨部会的经贸考察团，前往中东欧进行投资考察，也顺利签订了18项产学合作的 MOU。目前我们正在全力推动强化欧洲链接计划，继续深化和欧盟的合作伙伴关系。
Last year, Taiwan sent an interagency economic and trade delegation to Central and Eastern Europe to explore investment opportunities. The trip yielded 18 MOUs on industrial and academic collaboration. We are currently rolling out our plan to strengthen ties with Europe and continue to deepen cooperation and partnership with the European Union.
在这里，我要特别感谢各位贵宾以及所有民主伙伴的支持，协助台湾持续在各领域扩大跟各国的合作交流。
Here, I would like to thank each of you and all of our democratic partners for supporting and assisting Taiwan as we continue to expand cooperation and exchange with other nations.
像是今年3月，台湾和美国、日本、澳洲以及斯洛伐克共同举办的全球合作及训练架构研习营，这是这个合作平台启动后第一次共同探讨如何打击网络金融犯罪。
For example, in March, Taiwan, the US, Japan, Australia, and Slovakia jointly held a workshop under the Global Cooperation and Training Framework. For the first time since the launch of the framework, we discussed combating cyber-enabled financial crimes.
各位的这次来访、参加论坛、来到总统府，也让我们之间可以针对重要的国际议题当面交换意见。
Similarly, your visit and your presence at the Ketagalan Forum and here at the Presidential Office building today have made it possible for us to exchange views in person on important international issues.
台湾位在民主防线的最前线，我们期待跟全球民主伙伴捍卫民主自由的价值，也为印太地区长远的稳定和繁荣做出积极的贡献。各位贵宾的经验和建议都是台湾重要的助力，期待未来我们彼此有更多的合作交流，也祝福各位各位访问圆满顺利。
Taiwan stands on the front line in defending democracy. We seek to jointly safeguard the values of freedom and democracy with global democratic partners and proactively contribute to the long-term stability and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific region. Your experience and advice are a great help to Taiwan. I look forward to engaging in even more cooperation and exchanges in the future, and I wish you all a very successful visit.
Thank you.
Madam President, I'm thrilled to be back here after my visit 4 years ago, which was really quite an eye-opener for me, and that's why I was very happy to accept the kind invitation to come speak here again. Of course, things have changed since I was here last, and as you mentioned yourself, the environment has become globally far more tense in our part of the world with the invasion or the continued and scaled up invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and here too across the Taiwan Straits the general level of tensions have increased. What is notable, however, and what I spoke about here is that that up till now, or up till recently, I would say that security was a geopolitical issue, basically regional. The best example of this is NATO as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Why North Atlantic? I mean, it really comes down to bomber range, fighter refueling, troop transport, really matters of the from the old days when conflict was always kinetic. But since the millennium, we are living in a much more digital era. And from hacking to digital sabotage of networks, and as we saw the colonial oil pipeline in the United States, to disinformation, which is sent regularly to all of us, and which targets individuals and governments and companies, to even our democratic elections. We see that we live in a new era, or to put it bluntly, you don't need to, in my part of the world, you don't have to invade European country through disinformation. You can just alter the elections, and we've seen that even happen. So living in this era, we have to rethink what are security threats. When I alliteratively say that Tallinn, Torino, Toronto, Topeka, Tokyo, and Taipei are all equidistant in a digital era. And so security is no longer a geopolitical issue. It has now become, we have gotten rid of, at least in some sense, the geographic part of these things. Whereas the world, but conflict has not gone away. It is democracy versus authoritarianism today. There are democratic countries and there are authoritarian regimes. And the authoritarian regimes that we see around the world are quite hostile to to democratic governance because it threatens their own domestic political position if countries become democratic. And so I would say, in order to defend ourselves against these hostile approaches of authoritarian regimes, that we need a new security architecture that takes into account that we are no longer living in a world strictly constrained by geopolitics, and rather have a new form of an alliance based on shared values. And those values are, as we know, free and fair elections, respect for human rights, rule of law, and so on, which really is what gives our citizens their liberty. And this is something that which at one time was thought to be geographically constrained, but we see that it is not. In fact, if anything, the expansion of liberty in the last 30, 40, 50 years has shown or has disproved the idea of too many authoritarian regimes that lack of freedom is somehow cultural, civilizational, that certain civilizations don't need respect for human rights or the rights of the individual. And so I would say that, if anything, that is what, this is one of the signature roles of Taiwan these days, is to show the fallacy of the idea that is propagated by Russia, by the PRC, and recently also Malaysia, that in fact there are Asian values that are incompatible with the concepts of freedom, liberty, individual rights. And that's why it's so good to come to Taiwan to see, again, proof that there are universal values. So thank you for your hospitality.
Thank you.
蔡总统阁下，今天非常荣幸再次来到这边。我4年前曾经来过台湾，这次非常开心受到邀请，再次来到凯达格兰论坛演讲。那么自从我上次来到台湾以后，看到非常多的改变，如总统阁下您所说，全球的这个环境也看到非常多的紧张情势，尤其是不断升温的乌俄战争。那么现在我们看到台湾海峡的紧张情势也不断的在加温。不过我们可以看到的是，现在这个安全这个议题已经不再受限于地缘政治还有区域性。那所谓区域的安全机制，例如说北约、北大西洋公约，它是以一个地区性来作为基础，它考虑到的是这个轰炸范围、战斗机再次补充燃料的范围，还有人员、设备的运输等等。不过 这种冲突并没有因此而停止。那在千禧年世代，我们进入了一个数位的时代，我们看到有骇客的攻击、网络攻击。一个很好的例子就是美国的石油管路因此而受到攻击，假讯息也影响了每个个人、政府、公司、私部门，甚至影响了民主的选举。我们现在可以说是生活在一个全新的时代。那么，在欧洲不需要有热战，就会受到假讯息很大的影响。假讯息影响了欧洲我们的民主选举，所以在这个新的时代，我们应该要重新去思考所谓安全的概念。如我所说，世界上各大的城市，包括塔林、多伦多、东京、台北等等，现在在这个数位时代可以说是零距离。所以安全的概念不再是受限于地缘政治和地理，现在我们在全世界看到很多的这个冲突是民主对抗威权，有民主国家和威权政府。那威权政体对于民主国家有非常高的敌意，因为他们认为一个国家的民主化会对于这些专制者的国内的政治地位有非常大的影响。假如说我们要防御自己，我们要对抗这些威权的敌意，我们就必须要重新思考一个全新的安全架构。这个安全架构是不受到地缘政治所限制的，而是基于共享共同的价值所组成的联盟。那这些共同的价值包括自由的民主选举、对于人权的尊重、法治等等，还有公民要享有自由，这些都是不受到地理所限制的。那么我们看到在过去40-50年来，世界越来越自由化，这证明了一件事情，那就是过去威权主义所宣称的，他们所宣称有一些民族，他们有一些社会是不应该拥有民主自由，或是不适合拥有民主自由，这样子的论点已经完全被反驳了。我们可以看到，台湾现在就扮演一个非常重要的角色。台湾证明了亚洲人、亚洲国家也是可以拥有民主、自由、人权等精神的，这完全反驳了现在俄罗斯、中共还有马来西亚等威权政府所宣称的谬论。所以最后让我再一次感谢蔡总统阁下，非常荣幸今天来到这边，谢谢。